His usual composure was cracked at the edges. He found her sitting by the window, sipping warm barley tea, laptop open beside her. "Jean," she said softly, "did you know your investors fund Celtrionics?" He froze mid-step. "Who told you that?" "And their recent release matches our data. Someone sold them Aurora's formula." He moved closer, anger tightening his jaw. "That's impossible. My board would never—" "Wouldn't they?" she interrupted, voice trembling. "They already think I ruined your reputation. What if this is their way of removing us both?" He exhaled sharply, pacing. "You think I don't know how snakes move in my world, Lena? I've had men toast to my success while betting on my downfall." Her tone softened. "Then we fight them. Together." He met her gaze, her eyes calm but burning with resolve. "You're 3 months pregnant and investigating espionage," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "Motherhood hasn't made me weaker, Jean. It's made me precise." Later that night, while he slept, she opened her laptop again. The penthouse was quiet except for the sound of rain on the glass. She cross-referenced Aurora's internal logs with Jean Woo's corporate network data. And then she saw it. A transaction from Park Do-hyun, Jean Woo's closest business partner, to a Celtrionics executive, time-stamped 3 days before the breach. Her hands trembled. The next morning, Jean Woo stormed into Park's office, the door slamming against the wall. "You sold my project," he said in a voice so cold it shook the air. Park looked up, calm and smug. "Your project? You mean her experiment? The one making you a laughingstock in front of your own board?" Jean Woo's hand slammed down on the desk, rattling the crystal pen stand. "Watch your mouth." Park leaned back, a smirk twisting his face. "You built an empire, Jean, and threw it away for a woman. Don't act surprised when people cash in the pieces." Security appeared moments later, but Jean Woo didn't move again. He only whispered, "You're finished. Don't ever speak her name again." That evening, when he returned home, Lena was curled on the couch reading research notes, her tea still steaming beside her. He sat next to her, exhaustion carved into his features. "You found the leak," she said quietly. "I found one part of it," he replied. Park was working with Celtrionics. "But there's someone else, someone inside Aurora." Her brow furrowed. "Then the real danger's still out there." He reached for her hand. "You can't get involved in this." She met his eyes. "If I don't, they'll make me the next scapegoat." He sighed, but the corner of his mouth softened. "You don't stop, do you?" She smiled faintly. "Would you love me if I did?" He didn't answer, just leaned forward and kissed her hand gently, his lips lingering over the pulse of her wrist. The next day, Aurora's boardroom filled with whispers as Lena presented her findings. Hyrin sat across from her, face composed but eyes sharp. Lena spoke calmly, each slide of evidence stronger than the last. Timestamps, IP traces, Park's financial transfers. When she finished, Eun-suk rose. "Miss Brooks," she said proudly, "you've just cleared Aurora's name and saved this company." But before relief could settle, Hyrin's voice sliced through the silence. "Or maybe she's just clever enough to fake her own evidence." Gasps. Lena stared at her, stunned. "You think I'd risk my career, my baby, for this?" Hyrin's lips curved in a faint, cold smile. "Ambition makes people do strange things." Eun-suk slammed her folder shut. "Enough." The meeting was adjourned. That night, the rain returned, soft, endless, whispering against the windows. Lena stood by the balcony, wrapped in one of Jean Woo's oversized shirts, her hand resting protectively on her belly. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "You did it," he said softly. "You stood your ground." She leaned into him. "We're not done yet. The truth's still buried somewhere." He brushed a kiss to her temple. "Then we'll keep digging, together. No more secrets." Below them, the Han River shimmered under city lights, no longer a place of sorrow, but a reflection of how far she'd come. This time, she wasn't drowning, she was rising. Night in Seoul shimmered like liquid glass. From Aurora Biotech's upper floors, the city looked peaceful, but inside, the air was tense, charged, restless. Lena was the last one left in the lab. The hum of the incubators was the only sound, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. She sipped her barley tea, reviewing the data from the day's cultures. Everything looked right, and yet something felt wrong. Her instincts whispered. Someone had tampered with her samples. She scanned through her experiment log and froze that a new entry appeared at 22:11. It wasn't hers. Someone had logged in remotely and modified the enzyme markers. Her pulse raced. Whoever it was wanted to destroy her credibility again. She reached for her phone to call Dr. Eun-suk, but before she could dial, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then the fire alarm screamed through the silence. Smoke began curling from the back lab, thick, acrid, chemical. The sprinklers failed to activate. Fire suppression override, she whispered in horror. Someone disabled it. She grabbed her data drives, pressed them to her chest, and ran. The hallway glowed orange, heat licking up the walls. The air was choking, heavy with burning plastic and ethanol. Just as the smoke grew too thick, the emergency door burst open, and Jin-woo appeared through the haze, his coat thrown over his arm, his eyes wild. "Lena!" He reached her in seconds, wrapped his coat around her, and pulled her close as they stumbled out into the night air. The building alarms wailed behind them. Outside, fire trucks screamed up the drive, and red lights washed the street. Eun-suk rushed over, her face pale. "Are you hurt?" Lena shook her head, coughing. I saw it. Someone accessed the logs before the fire started." Jin-woo held her close, his own breathing ragged. "You're not stepping foot in there again until we know who did this." Eun-suk nodded grimly. "The fire began in your lab, Lena. But the security cameras went offline 5 minutes before ignition." Lena stared at her in disbelief. "So they erased their tracks completely?" "Yes," Eun-suk said quietly. "But they made one mistake, the access ID. Whoever did this used my clearance code." Jin-woo's eyes widened. "Yours?" Eun-suk nodded. "But I wasn't even in the building." Lena's voice shook. "Then someone cloned your credentials, just like they did to Hyrin before." Later that night, back at the penthouse, the city lights flickered across the river like broken stars. Lena sat wrapped in a blanket, trembling, a small burn mark visible on her wrist. Jin-woo knelt in front of her, gently applying ointment. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly. "Only when I think about it," she said, forcing a smile. He looked up, his eyes dark with anger and fear. "Someone wanted you dead." She met his gaze. "Or silenced." He clenched his jaw. "I'll find them." "You'll make more enemies," she warned. "I already have," he replied quietly. "But they've just made the worst mistake of their lives." 2 days later, Aurora's security footage was recovered from a hidden backup server. The footage was grainy, dark, but clear enough to show one figure entering the lab just before the fire. A woman, tall, hair pulled back, wearing a lab coat. Eun-suk's voice trembled as she paused the video. "That's Hyrin." Lena's stomach turned. "It can't be." Eun-suk looked at her. "You saw her at the meeting yesterday?" "Yes," Lena whispered. "She pretended to comfort me." Eun-suk exhaled. "Then she's playing both sides." That night, Jin-woo received a call from an anonymous number. "If you value your woman," a distorted voice said, "stop digging into Celtrionics. Accidents happen, and the next one might not miss." Jin-woo's blood ran cold. He turned toward Lena, who was asleep on the couch, one hand resting on her belly, her breathing calm. He swore quietly under his breath, fingers tightening around the phone, that he would burn the world before letting anyone touch her. The next morning, he met with his private security head, Director Kang, in a quiet corner of his corporate tower. "Protect her," Jin-woo said. Discreetly. "I don't want her to know she's being watched, but I want eyes on her 24 hours a day." "Yes, sir," Kang replied. "And the woman, Dr. Hyrin?" Jin-woo's eyes hardened. "I want every record she's ever touched. Find out who's paying her." Meanwhile, Lena returned to the ruined Aurora lab, standing before the blackened remnants of her work. Her heart ached, not just for the lost data, but for the betrayal that lingered like smoke. Eun-suk joined her quietly. "I should have seen it," Lena said softly. "She hated me from the beginning." Eun-suk touched her shoulder. "Jealousy makes people reckless." But courage rebuilds what envy destroys. And you, Lena, you have courage. Lena smiled faintly. Maybe. But I also have something she'll never have. What's that? Someone worth fighting for. That evening, as Jinwoo returned home, he found her sketching molecules in her notebook by the balcony. Her hair was tied loosely, her face calm but thoughtful. He stood watching her for a moment. This woman who had nearly died, and still chose to build again. When she looked up, he said quietly, "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She smiled. Strong people don't jump into rivers. They just learn to swim differently. He walked over, resting a hand on her belly. Then we'll swim together, no matter how deep it gets. Outside, the Han River shimmered in the night. The same river that once almost claimed her life now glittering with the reflection of hope. The night's soul burned silver beneath the rain. Through the wide windows of the Aurora Group penthouse, streaks of lightning flashed like camera bulbs, and thunder hummed low, as if the heavens themselves were listening. Kim Jinwoo stood before the glass, his reflection fragmented against the storm. Behind him, the scent of antiseptic lingered faintly, the reminder of Lena's brief hospitalization after the fire. She had collapsed from exhaustion, and though the doctor called it stress-related fatigue, Jinwoo had never felt such terror. Now, the man who controlled billions, who ruled boardrooms and commanded respect, could think of nothing but her heartbeat. His phone buzzed, but he didn't turn out he knew who it was. "Speak," he said flatly. On the other end, Detective Park's voice was tight. "We found the source of the breach, sir. The one who leaked the research files and ordered the lab fire." Jinwoo's jaw clenched. "Who?" "Vice Chairman Han Jae-suk. Your cousin." The words hit like cold steel to Jae-suk, the cousin he had mentored, trusted, and raised through the company's ranks, had tried to destroy him. He partnered with a biotech competitor in Busan. Promised them Aurora's formulas in exchange for control of your Seoul operations, Park continued. He also paid Hyrin to stage the accident. It was all meant to trigger a scandal and make the board force your resignation. Jinwoo said nothing for a long moment, then quietly, "Send me everything. Tonight." He hung up, turning toward the couch, where Lena slept curled beneath a soft blanket, her hair loose, her hand resting protectively over her rounded belly which had changed her. She looked softer now, yet stronger. The woman who once tried to end her life at the Han River now carried a new one inside her. He brushed a stray curl from her face and whispered, "You're my beginning, Lena, not my weakness." By morning, the storm had cleared, but chaos was waiting. News broke fast, leaked emails, exposed conspiracies, board members demanding explanations. Aurora Group was bleeding in the headlines. Jinwoo walked into the emergency meeting in a dark tailored suit, expression calm but eyes blazing. Cameras flashed. Voices rose. Vice Chairman Choi sat across from him, smug. "Cousin, this company needs stability." "Stability?" Jinwoo cut in softly. "You tried to burn down my company. You nearly killed my future wife in the process." The room fell silent. He threw a folder onto the table. Photographs, wire transfers, signed contracts, undeniable proof. "I built Aurora from the ground up. You built lies. Effective immediately, you're terminated and under criminal investigation." Jae-suk paled as security moved in. When the board erupted in applause, Jinwoo didn't smile. He simply walked out, unbothered by the storm of reporters waiting beyond the doors. His empire would recover. His heart, however, had other priorities. That night, he found Lena standing on the balcony, a mug of barley tea in hand, watching the lights ripple over the Han River. The wind lifted her hair, and he could see the quiet strength in her, the resilience, the grace, the unspoken fear of tomorrow. She turned when she sensed him. "You should be resting," she said softly. "So should you," he murmured, stepping closer. "You've been through too much." "I'm fine, Jinwoo." Her voice trembled on the edge of belief. "You have a company to save. You don't need me in the way." He exhaled, then took her cup and set it down. "Lena, you are the reason I still have something worth saving." She looked up at him, tears bright in her eyes. "Why are you saying this?" "Because I almost lost you." He sank to one knee, no velvet box, no orchestra, no staged lights. Just the heartbeat of soul and the hum of traffic far below. Marry me, Lena Brooks. Not because you're carrying my child, but because I can't imagine a single sunrise without you. For a moment, she couldn't speak. The city around them blurred into light. She knelt with him, her hands trembling as they touched his face. I was never waiting for a proposal, she whispered. I was waiting for someone to see me the way you just did. And there, under the soft hum of the night, she kissed him, gentle, slow, certain. 2 weeks later, they were married quietly in a courthouse overlooking the river. Eun-suk stood beside her brother, tears glimmering in her eyes, while Lena wore a simple white dress that swayed like silk rain. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Jin-woo smiled, that rare, unguarded smile that few had ever seen, and kissed her like he was claiming forever. Outside, the city roared with life, and for the first time, Lena felt she belonged to it, not as a stranger, not as a broken heart, but as a woman loved completely. Smiling, she looked around, the river, the skyline, the bridge lights, the families laughing, and felt a deep, quiet peace settle inside her. Funny, she murmured, how the same place that almost took my life became the one where I found everything I ever wanted. Jin-woo turned to her, his gaze soft and sure. That's how soul works. It breaks you first, so you can bloom again. The wedding was quiet but breathtaking. They married beneath a canopy of lanterns in the Kim family's private estate on the outskirts of Seoul, an intimate ceremony attended only by Dr. Eun-suk, a few trusted friends, and a handful of guards who doubled as witnesses. Lena's gown was a fusion of cultures, soft ivory satin embroidered with golden Korean motifs, paired with a delicate African headpiece her mother had once worn. Jin-woo stood beside her in a white hanbok jacket, simple yet regal. When he saw her walking toward him, he forgot the cameras, the scandals, the world. There was only her, glowing, brave, breathtaking. The officiant's words were a blur. All Jin-woo could think of was the way her hand trembled slightly when she placed it in his. When the vows came, he didn't read from the paper. He looked into her eyes and said, "I found you when I had everything, but nothing real. You gave meaning to the noise, warmth to the silence. I vow to never let the world steal what we've built." Lena's voice wavered as she replied, "I came to this city with nothing but heartbreak. I leave it with a home, a family, and a love that heals me." When he kissed her, fireworks erupted above the river in celebration, his surprise gift to her. The reflection of the lights danced in her tears. The hospital smelled like lemon disinfectant and new beginnings. Dawn pressed pale light through blinds, striping the ceiling in soft, clinical bars. Outside, the Han River ran gray and patient beneath the bridge, unaware that a different kind of current pulsed inside the hospital walls. Lena had never imagined the day would arrive with such ordinary things. Monitors beeping, the rustle of disposable gowns, the quick footsteps of nurses who knew how to make panic feel contained. There was a small, ridiculous bowl of jujubes on the bedside table, a cure-all from an aunt back in New Jersey. Lena had smiled at its absurdity the night before. Now the bowl sat untouched. She gripped Jin-woo's hand like an anchor. His palm was warm, steady, calloused from a lifetime of signing deals, but his fingers trembled in ways she'd never seen in boardroom photos. He had slept on the plastic chair beside her bed for 2 nights in a row, his tie loosened, his coat slung over the backrest. He looked exhausted and luminous, 2 things that fit him oddly but perfectly. "Breathe with me," Jin kept saying, voice quiet as a promise. She did. In for 4. Out for 6. Like they'd practiced, like the classes and apps said to do. The midwife, small, efficient, with laugh lines that spoke of many births, coached with calm authority. Push when you feel the urge. Listen to your body. You are doing the most important work in the room. Lena thought of the river, of the night she'd almost let go, of how distant grief was, and how strange that the same city which had once taught her to sink was now teaching her to rise. She pushed. The sounds of the room sharpened and then narrowed, Jin-woo's calloused knuckles worrying the bedsheet, the midwife's precise directions, the hum of the monitor that measured 2 hearts beating as if in conversation. Hours folded into each other, each contraction a small, volcanic eruption. Pain rolled through her in waves, fierce and honest. When it peaked, she found a strength she hadn't known she'd saved. Jin-woo kept saying her name like a benediction. "Lena," he whispered after each exhale, as if the sound of it could stitch something whole. Then a cry, high and immediate and true. It cut the air like light through fog. The midwife laughed, joyous and relieved. "We have a girl," she announced, lifting the tiny, wrinkled thing and placing her on Lena's chest. Lena sobbed without shame. The tears tasted of salt and everything she had survived. The newborn skin smelled like milk and the hospital's antiseptic, warm and stubborn with life. The baby's fingers flexed and clung around Lena's thumb as if testing the world already. Jin-woo leaned forward as if to drink her in, face open in a way Lena had seen only once before, the night he'd watched a performance of his mother's piano and cried, the vulnerability of a man who trusted something more than control. "What should we call her?" Jin-woo asked, voice small. Lena's laughter bubbled through her tears. "Hannah," she said without thinking because the name felt right. Simple, whole, a small word with room for a whole life inside it. "Hannah." "What?" "Flower." He repeated it like tasting new music. "Hannah." His lips brushed the baby's forehead, then Lena's, then finally hers in a slow, stunned kiss. Outside, the city that had watched their fall and rise carried on. Trams clattering, a vendor setting up for his dawn shift, but inside this small room time folded differently. Jin-woo stayed the first night, holding Hannah in an awkward cradle under the fluorescent lights. He read her the corporate bylaws in a soft, teasing voice, a joke that made Lena laugh through exhaustion. He taught himself how the tiny hands curled and how fragile the breath sounded. At 3 a.m, when the corridor was wide and empty, Lena watched him and felt a tenderness so large it made her breathless. The man who had built skyscrapers and chaired boards was learning lullabies. The first weeks were a sanctity. They retreated from the cameras Jin-woo had once tamed and from the gossip columns that flared like small, angry fires. An agreement, unspoken and iron-strong, hung between them. They would guard this newborn with the ferocity of people who knew what it felt like to be erased. Nurses were discreet, visitors were vetted, and afternoon naps became liturgies. Lena surprised herself with the depth of the love she felt for this tiny person. She nursed Hannah in the quiet of the early mornings, lulled by the rhythm of feeding. The ache in her body from months of fight and fear softened into something else, a map of tenderness. The public, inched by inch, shifted. The scandal that had once delivered a blow softened under the weight of truth, of a mother's steady eyes and the sight of a CEO at the hospital door at dawn, more human than the headlines had imagined. Lena gave a few interviews, carefully in her own voice, where she spoke of science and dreams and of not wanting pity, only dignity. People listened. They responded. Slowly, sympathy and then respect pushed the gossip aside. One afternoon, Lena stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of their temporary recovery suite and watched Hannah sleep in a sling against Jin-woo's chest as he half sat, half snoozed in the chair. A patchwork of sunlight fractured across his hair. She thought about her mother back in the States, who had always told her that pain could be a kind of teacher, if you were willing to learn. She thought about the river that had once reflected only loss and how that reflection had been rewritten. Later, when they were alone and the night was a hush over the city, Jin-woo took Lena's hand and spoke with the quiet conviction that had become one of the things she loved most about him. "We built this together," he said. "No headline, no boardroom, no whisper can change that." Lena looked at the baby whose breath matched the rhythm of the world. "We did," she agreed. "And we'll keep building." Jin-woo tucked a stray curl behind Lena's ear. "Our daughter is lucky," he said softly. "She gets to know what it means to be brave, not because the world told her, but because she lives inside it." Lena rested her head against his shoulder and for a long moment, allowed herself to simply be mother, partner, survivor, the start of a new dawn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also tell us the country you are watching us from in the comments section so that we will make a story for you.